Modern civilization is not built merely on rules and organization. It is built on psychological risk management. A society of billions cannot afford individuals who behave like deep, unpredictable mammals. So it gradually engineers human beings into low-volatility emotional units. The goal is not wisdom. The goal is stability. A mind that feels too intensely, questions too radically, breaks too violently, or desires too powerfully, is a threat to systems that depend on consistency. That is why childhood today is not primarily about discovery. It is an early introduction to consequence, performance, compliance. Children learn to internalize fear of failure far earlier than they learn curiosity. The point isn't to educate the mind. It is to quietly begin standardizing it. Adulthood simply continues the same logic in more sophisticated forms. Workplaces do not prefer genius, they prefer reliability. Professionalism is just emotional compression marketed as virtue. The better you are at suppressing your inner world while performing outwardly, the more capable you seem. Even personal identity now functions like a compliance document. You are encouraged to present yourself in socially readable, morally convenient, politically safe, psychologically non-threatening formats. People call this self-expression. In reality, it is reputation management. Modern civilization celebrates structure not because structure is noble, but because structured minds are cheaper to govern, easier to manage, simpler to predict, and less likely to disrupt anything important. And we proudly tell ourselves, we live in the age of logic. Except, logic here does not mean courage to face truth. It means utility, efficiency, reduced volatility. We did not build a rational civilization. We built a civilization that cannot psychologically survive human wildness. And that is the core wound. Because earlier civilizations, including ours, were not always terrified of psychological intensity. They built cultures capable of tolerating mental depth. That is why something like the Mahabharata could exist. It was not written to create obedient citizens. It was built to hold the full violence and complexity of human nature. Rage, betrayal, devotion, transcendence, moral uncertainty, despair, divine terror. Not as material to be censored, but as realities to confront. The Ramayana was not emotional comfort food. It carried duty, sacrifice, fracture, exile, impossible choices, and the cost of righteousness. It treated emotional pain as something worthy of honesty, not something to sanitize. Systems of thought like Buddhism, Nyaya, and Vedanta were not decorative spirituality. They were structured laboratories of consciousness. They confronted suffering, identity, meaning, thinking, reality itself, not gently, but with intellectual ferocity. Even the traditions we now label taboo had purpose. Sufis did not approach truth politely. They approached it through emotional extremity, through surrender, because some truths cannot be accessed through moderated self-control. Tantra refused the idea that darkness inside must be hidden. It demanded a confrontation with fear, shame, ego, desire, mortality, without disguise. Not irresponsibility. Psychological honesty of a kind modern culture is deeply uncomfortable with. And the Kama Sutra, long degraded into a cultural joke, was never about indulgence. It was about consciousness through the body, intimacy as psychological exploration, desire as something to understand, not fear. This wasn't chaos. This was civilization allowing the full range of human interiority to exist. And this was not uniquely Indian. This was human. Newton, treated now as the symbol of sterile scientific purity, spent enormous effort exploring alchemy, prophecy, cosmic architecture. Jung insisted that myth, dream, symbol, religion, and the unconscious are not nonsense, but essential maps of the psyche. Tesla lived in a psychological state where invention and mysticism were indistinguishable movements of imagination. Freud, controversial or not, at least had the courage to open the forbidden basement of the human mind. Across civilizations, the greatest minds were rarely psychologically safe, they were psychologically unrestricted. Then civilization scaled. Systems grew larger. Administration grew heavier. Economies demanded predictability. And unpredictable inner life became inconvenient. So culture began shrinking the legitimate size of the human mind. We simplified our epics into moral cartoons. We converted demanding philosophies into motivational slogans. We turned dangerous spiritual traditions into sanitized culture products. We flattened intellectual giants into school chapters. We didn't lose depth. We archived it for safety. Then we congratulated ourselves for being modern. And we quietly redefined sanity. Sanity became the ability to function inside civilization without disturbing its equilibrium. Mental health became synonymous with emotional moderation. Stability became more valuable than depth. But here is the psychological bill civilization does not want to pay. Mental illness has biological foundations and must always be medically treated, that is undeniable. But there is also a structural truth. An organism designed for depth, mystery, existential risk, emotional magnitude, and spiritual complexity cannot survive long-term inside permanent psychological moderation without consequence. It might behave. It might function. It might succeed. But internally, it suffocates. And you see it already. Anxiety, depression, emptiness, loneliness, all rising most sharply in cultures obsessed with optimization, correctness, image management, and internal control. Chronic suppression is not neutral. It corrodes. It hollows. It fractures. A powerful engine that is never allowed to run does not become safer. It begins to crack. Not every psychological collapse is rebellion. But some breakdowns are not merely disorders. Some collapses are the human spirit refusing to live as a domesticated animal. And here lies our quiet tragedy. We laugh at Tantra without understanding its courage. We trivialize Kama Sutra without respecting its sophistication. We aestheticize Sufism into entertainment. We turn Mahabharata and Ramayana into children's material. We flatten Newton into equations. We reduce Tesla into spectacle. We fold Jung into therapy worksheets. And we proudly call ourselves advanced. Meanwhile, more lives feel emotionally airless. More people feel like functioning shells. More minds quietly break while maintaining socially acceptable lives. Because something deep inside still whispers, I was not built to live this small. Human beings were never designed to be perfectly tidy, psychologically well-packaged organisms. We were meant to confront unknowns. To risk inner chaos. To explore psychic wilderness. To build worlds not just outside us, but within us. Wild minds created civilizations. Tamed minds maintain them. Broken minds endure them. So the question is not only how we treat mental illness. The deeper question is, what have we done to the human spirit, that so many minds now collapse simply to remain normal? If this made sense, if it resonated, if it felt like a perspective worth thinking about, then like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe, because we are going to keep talking about things most people prefer not to look at.